So, you want to know how to properly apply force to the rear? Then you've come to the right place. Some have pointed out how I mostly drive all-wheel drive in my videos and suggested several rear-wheel drive vehicle classes to cover. And to be completely honest, yes, I like all-wheel drives more, as they are more fun to drive for me personally. I am also no expert when it comes to rear-wheel drives, though I believe I could still give a few tips and tricks for setup and driving, as I can at least keep my rears on the road most of the time and be reasonably quick. At first, the idea was to do a video about the Group B RWDs, or the H3 class, but when I thought about it, there was little point in separation. The same behavior applies to all the rear-wheel classes, just that some require faster reaction for faster cars, but not really different reaction. The suspension of RGTs is much more forgiving than the historic cars, and the Group Bs are notoriously difficult to tame and react quickly enough, but the general understanding is still the same. So, let's start with what I believe people struggle the most with: drifting and oversteer. When you are on a grippy surface, you should avoid oversteer altogether and be really gentle with the throttle. But once you get into it, the oversteer, the car behaves much different to other drivetrains. Whereas front and all-wheel drive will make you move forward under throttle, even when oversteering. A rear-wheel drive will instead change the drifting angle. This is because your front wheels are just rolling along and the rear has broken loose, effectively losing its ability to push the front properly forward. You have to regain grip to really accelerate again, which means that to get out of a drift, you are applying less throttle. The lesser throttle, the smaller the angle becomes until you can apply full pressure from behind the car again. And then you want to increase the throttle again to speed up. But carefully, so you don't break into a steep drift again. Effectively, your car is a pendulum, anchored by the front wheels and controlling the swing by throttle. All of this is a balancing act. When drifting a rear-wheel drive, you rarely have full throttle applied, but also rarely have no throttle applied, as you usually want to accelerate, of course. In other drivetrains, one could use the throttle as an on-off switch and still drive reasonably well. In the rear-wheel cars, this is almost impossible. Therefore, I'd recommend a pedal set, or at least a controller with analog trigger buttons to control the throttle. If you happen to drive on a keyboard and you can manage rears, please explain your technique in the comments for all the others with only keyboards, because I have no clue how to do that, let alone explain it. To sum up drifting, in a rear-wheel drive, the throttle controls your drift angle and doesn't make you go forward faster while sliding. It's a balancing task to find just the right amount of throttle for shallow drifts and quick acceleration. On-off driving is almost impossible. But all of this is for hairy situations, when you have entered a slide. You need this, because slides can't be avoided entirely, but you actually want to minimize sideways driving for going fast. Of course, in the real world, many people like drifting steeply, because it feels fun. And in movies it often gets pictured as being fast, because it looks cool, but in motorsports it isn't the quick way. This brings me to what I call snappiness. The more snappy a car is, the easier and unpredictably it breaks away into oversteering. The undisputed kings are all those cars of Group B RWD, together with the Lancia Stratos. That could actually be a very nice benchmark. If you can drive the Stratos fast, you can drive any of the rears fast as well. But you can reduce the snappiness of a car with some setup. The key variables to adjust are the lock values of the differential, as well as the anti-roll bars. Differential is explained quickly. More lock means more snappy. Less lock means less snap, but also less grip on loose and slippery surfaces. You should aim for controllable snappiness while not making the car lose grip on ice and gravel. Though on tarmac you can usually fully open the differential of a rear-wheeled car. Now, the anti-roll bars allow even more fine control if opening the diff is nowhere near enough, like in Group B. For how anti-roll bars work in general, take a look at my New Zealand guide linked above. For reducing snappiness, you want to set them up unequally between front and rear. Here you can see the two extremes side to side. If the rear is stiff and the front loose, the car becomes more and more snappy. That's because the rear axle has not much way to compensate corner loads on the wheels other than to break away, while the front finds much more grip and stays where it is. When the rear bars are loose and the front is stiff, the opposite is true. And that is the way to reduce snappiness. For cars like this Porsche, I actually used the maximum difference between the anti-roll bars. But a word of warning still. Once it really breaks away now, it starts swinging with big speed, since a lot of energy was already buffered in the suspension before that point. You need to be prepared for those cases, but overall the cars become much more controllable in my opinion. So remember, try to avoid high angle drifts, they are slow. Balance the throttle through a drift to control the angle you want. And to make bitchy vehicles more tamed, try to adjust their differential and anti-roll bars accordingly. Let me know if this helped you in staying on the road and improving your times. And since driving rear-wheel drive cars quickly is some of the most difficult thing to do in racing, I'll leave you with a very short but wise quote fittingly from the drift king Kiichi Tsuchiya. The important thing is to keep trying. Until next time, be fearless, Skål!